during an interview on Microsoft Entra ID, which was previously known as Azure Active Directory. This will help us in preparing for an interview. If you are trying to, or if you are aiming to apply or aiming to give an interview on Microsoft as a role of Microsoft administrator or Microsoft Entra ID administrator. So let's move on. First, let's understand what is Microsoft Entra ID. Microsoft Entra ID, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, Azure AD, is Microsoft's cloud-based identity and access management service. It provides a comprehensive solution for managing identities, securing access to resources, and enhancing overall security for organizations. Now, what kind of questions an interviewer asks during an interview? So it would start from a basic set of questions, and then as we move on, there would be more technical questions. Then it would be further goes to a next level of advanced questions. There could be scenario based questions, and there could be some questions on the best practices for Microsoft Entra ID, and there could be some behavioral questions on which it would cover more on the real scenarios or hands-on or kind of issues we have dealt with. So let's go through a few of the basic questions. So the first question could be, what is Microsoft Entra ID? Now in this, the response, this is a response, and we can use this as this response and add few more elements into it, and then form and then prepare our response or answer to the interviewer. Microsoft Entra ID, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, is a cloud-based identity and access management service. It helps organizations manage users' identities, secure access to applications and resources, and enforce security policies. It provides features like single sign-on, SSO, multi-factor authentication, MFA, conditional access, and identity protection. Now, the second question could be on the basic questions category is, how does Microsoft Entra ID differs from on-prem Active Directory, which is called as Microsoft Active Directory? So response for that could be, Microsoft Entra ID is designed for cloud-based identity management, whereas on-prem Active Directory is focused on managing local network resources. Microsoft Entra ID provides cloud-specific features like single sign-on for SSA, software as a service applications, conditional access, and identity protection. In contrast, on-prem AD is better suited for traditional IT environments and includes features like group policies and domain-based network management. The next question is, how does Microsoft Entra ID integrate with on-prem Active Directory? So there is what if a client is having, if an organization is having an on-prem environment and they have on-prem Active Directory and they want to move few applications into any of the cloud platform or in Azure, how we can integrate between the on-prem Active Directory and Microsoft Entra ID, which is hosted on Azure. So that can be achieved by Microsoft Entra ID integrates with on-prem Active Directory using Entra ID Connect. This tool synchronizes on-premises user accounts, groups, and password to Entra ID, enabling a unified identity for users across both environments. This integration supports various authentication methods such as password hash, synchronization, pass-through authentication, and federations with ADFS, Active Directory Federation Service. Now, we would be moving to the technical set of questions. So the first question could be, what is Microsoft Entra ID Connect and how it is used? Now, Microsoft Entra ID Connect is a tool that connects on-premises directories to Entra ID, enabling hybrid identity solution. It synchronizes on-premises objects like user, groups, and password to Entra ID. This allows users to have a unified identity across both on-premises and cloud environments, facilitating single sign-on and seamless access to cloud and on-premises resources. So this way, we can have the same user account which is created on-prem Active Directory to access resources on the cloud. Now, the next question under the technical questions category could be, what is Microsoft Entra ID conditional access and how does it work? Conditional access in Microsoft Entra ID is a feature that allows administrators to connect to control how and when users can access resources based on specific conditions. These conditions can include user location, device state, application sensitivity, and risk level. Policies are created to enforce actions such as requiring MFA, multi-factor authentication, blocking access from non-compliant devices, or limiting access based on network locations. Now the next question is, what is the role of Microsoft Entra ID identity protection? Microsoft Entra ID identity protection provides tools to detect and respond to identity-based threats. It uses machine learning and behavioral analytics to identify suspicious activities such as unusual sign-in attempt or compromised credentials. Administrator can create policies to automatically mitigate risk by requiring users to change passwords, perform MFA, or block access until the risk is resolved. So this basically helps in providing avoiding any unwanted access to the environment and preventing and securing the environment. Now, what is Microsoft Entra ID application proxy and how it is used? Microsoft Entra ID application proxy is a feature that allows you secure remote access to on-premises web applications. It acts as a reverse proxy, providing a secure connection from external users to internal applications without requiring VPN. To use it, you install a connector on your on-premises server, configure the application in the Entra ID portal, and publish the app. Users can then access the application through an external URL secured by Entra ID authentication and conditional access policies. Moving on to the next question. How do you implement and manage self-service password reset, which is SSPR, in Microsoft Entra ID? This is actually a feature which is given to the end user for resetting their own password based on their own convenience, and it reduces the workload of an administrator. So, to implement self-service password reset SSPR in Microsoft Entra ID, follow these steps. Enable SSPR in the Intranet ID portal and configure users and police group assignments. Customize authentication method for password reset, such as email, SMS, security questions, or the Microsoft Authenticator app. Configure notifications and customize branding. Test the configuration with a subset of users. Monitor usage and feedback and adjust policies as needed. SSPR allows users to reset their passwords without admin intervention, improving user experience and reduce help desk load. Now the next question is, what is the purpose of Microsoft Entra ID identity governance and how do you use it? Microsoft Entra ID identity governance helps organizations manage the identity lifecycle and ensure compliance with internal and external regulations. It includes features like access review, entitlement management, and privileged access management. Access review allow periodic evaluation of user access to resources, ensuring that permissions are appropriate and up to date. Entitlement management simplifies the process of managing access packages and approval workflow, while privileged access management controls and monitors administrative access to critical resources. Moving on, explain how to set up single sign-on SSO with Microsoft Entra ID for an application. To set up SSO with Microsoft Entra ID for an application, do the following. Register the application in the Entra ID portal. Configure the application with the necessary SSO settings such as redirect URLs. Configure SAML or OpenID Connect depending on the application's requirements. Assign users or groups to the application. After setting up SSO, test the SSO configurations to ensure users can sign in seamlessly. Now, let's move to advanced questions, which and this will have a bit more complexity on the technical side. So the first question could be, describe Microsoft Entra ID Privilege Identity Management PIM. Microsoft Entra ID Privileged Identity Management PIM is a service that helps manage, control, and monitor access to important resources in Entra ID, Azure, and other Microsoft online services. PIM provides just-in-time privileged access, time-bound access with approval workflow, and activity logging. It reduces the risk associated with standing administrative privilege by ensuring that access is granted only when necessary and is appropriately monitored. How do you configure and manage Microsoft Entra ID B2C? Microsoft Entra ID B2C business to consumer is a service that for managing customer identities and providing authentication for customers facing application. To configure and manage Entra ID B2C, create an Entra ID B2C tenant, register your application in the tenant, configure identity providers, example social accounts, local accounts, set up users flows or customer policies to define the user experience for sign in, sign up, and profile editing. Monitor and manage user accounts, security settings, and policy configurations through the Entra ID B2C portal. Moving on to the scenario based questions. First question could be, how would you respond to a security breach detected by Microsoft Entra ID identity protection? In response to a security breach detected by identity protection, I would review the risk events and the affected user accounts, immediately notify the affected users and relevant stakeholders, enforce remediation actions such as requiring password resets and MFA challenges for the compromised accounts, conduct a thorough investigation to understand the cause of the breach and identify any other affected users or accounts, implement additional security measures and update conditional access policies to prevent similar incidents in the future. The next scenario based question could be, can you provide an example of how you used Microsoft Entra ID to improve security in an organization? In a previous role, I enhanced security by implementing several features of Microsoft Entra ID First, I enforced MFA, multi-factor authentication for all users, significantly reducing the risk of account compromise. I also set up conditional access policies to ensure that only compliant devices could access sensitive applications. Additionally, I used identity protection to monitor for suspicious activities and configured automated response to mitigate risks. These measures collectively strengthened the organization's security posture and ensured compliance with industry standards. Now, the another one. How would you handle a situation where a user is logged out of their account due to such suspicious activity detected by Entra ID? If a user is logged out due to suspicious activity, I would first review the details of the suspicious activity in the Entra ID identity protection dashboard to understand the nature of the risk. Then I would verify the user's identity through alternative means such as contacting them via phone or in person. Once verified, I would assist them in completing any required actions such as changing their passwords or completing an MFA challenge. Finally, I would investigate the root cause of the suspicious activity to prevent further or future incidents and update security policies if necessary. Now, we'll see few of the best practices questions. The first one could be, what best practices do you follow for securing Microsoft Entra ID? Best practices for securing Microsoft Entra ID could be as follows. Enforcing multi-factor authentication MFA for all users, especially for privileged accounts. Implementing conditional access policies to control access based on users' locations and device conditions. Regularly reviewing and updating access permissions using access review. Utilizing identity protections to detect and respond to suspicious activities. Applying the principle of least privilege by limiting admin roles and using privileged identity management PIM for just-in-time access. Monitoring sign-in activities and setting up alerts for anomalous or abnormal behavior. Keeping up to date with security updates and best practices from Microsoft. Another best practice question could be, how do you ensure compliance with data protection regulations using Microsoft Entra ID? To ensure compliance with data protection regulations using Microsoft Entra ID, implement robust identity governance, including access review and entitlement management. Use conditional access policies to enforce security requirements like MFA and device compliance. Regularly audit access to sensitive data and applications. Encrypt data in transit and at rest. Use identity protection to detect and mitigate risks. Maintain detailed logs and audit trails of access and administrative actions. Ensure user data is managed according to privacy regulations with clear consent and data handling policies. Regularly review and update compliance policies in line with regulatory charges. Now, we'll move to a few of the behavioral questions. The first one could be, how do you keep up with the latest features and updates in Microsoft Entra ID? I stay updated with the latest features and updates in Microsoft Entra ID by following the Microsoft Azure blogs, subscribing to Intranet ID announcements, and participating in Microsoft webinars and training sessions. I also engage with the tech community through forums, attend relevant conference, and complete courses on platforms like Microsoft Learn. Regularly reviewing release notes and documents helps me understand new capabilities and best practices. Moving on to the next one. Describe a challenging project involving Microsoft Entra ID that you successfully completed. Now, the response could be, One challenging project involves integrating Microsoft Entra ID with multiple third-party SSS, which is software as a service applications for single sign-on. The goal was to streamline access to users and enhance security. I coordinated with the application vendors to understand the SSO requirements, configured the necessary settings in Intranet ID, and tested the integration thoroughly. During the project, I encountered complete compatibility issues with one application, but by working closely with the vendor and adjusting our configuration, we successfully implemented SSO across all targeted applications, improving user experience and security. This is just an example. I would suggest you form your question or prepare your question or response in according to this example based on your actual experience or based on the actual project you have worked on, so that it gives confidence to the interviewer that you have actually worked on it. Avoid using this if you have not worked on any of such project, and avoid such scenarios or situation. So use this as example only when you have a project which you have worked on, and form your response or answer according to this as an example. Now, how do you handle a critical security incident involving Microsoft Entra ID? This is again similar to the previous one. If you have worked on a critical security incident, I believe if yes, then use this as an example only to form a response or form your answer, not to use this as is if you have not worked on it. Handling a critical security incident involves quickly identifying and containing and contacting the incident to prevent further damage, investigating the incident to understand the scope and root cause, communicating with affected stakeholders and keeping them informed throughout the process, implementing remedial actions such as resetting password, revoking access, or adjusting conditional access policies, documenting the incident and response actions for future reference and compliance, reviewing and updating security measures to prevent similar incidents in the future, conducting a post-incident analysis to identify lessons learned and improve incident response plans. With this, we have came to the end of our video. Hope this would have been useful. Thank you for watching.